It's match day in the Premier League. Arsenal taking on Leicester at the Emirates Stadium with the hope of having a fortuitous weekend with some tricky competition for our rivals, but they might have to do it without a key player. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routine. So I hope you've had a fantastic week. You've made it to the weekend and I hope it's going to be a good one for us all. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Tom, Damien, Paul, I see you. Oda Relay, Matt G, Martin, Steve. We've got Barry and Franklin, Zuman UK, Peter, Olawale, Edison, Jack, Stevie, Mark, NSW. We've got Peter and Owen in the chat as well. And I think when I was scrolling through, as I joined into the chat box, Raz, who says, "Morning all, I get married at 3:30 today." Raz, congratulations, my friend. I started off my own wedding day by doing this very show. So it's a good omen. It's a good omen, my friend. So congratulations to you, and I hope that it goes very, very well indeed. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot of love from the people in the chat box as well. Right. Make sure you drop a like, of course, as always. And please do help us on our way to 1K every single day on the channel. It is incredibly humbling, as always, to see you supporting the channel. And I see even more humbleness being needed as Devin has joined up as a brand new member of the channel as well. Welcome to the TGT family. Right, let's jump into today's stories. We begin with our under-21s, who sadly lost at home against Liverpool 3-0, which isn't, wildly surprising. Liverpool have always had a very good youth setup and one of the more dominant sides in the PL2 table. However, there was something of note that happened too late in the game to have much of an impact on things, because it was 3-0 at the time. But Liverpool's goalkeeper ended up being sent off for a second yellow card for, wait for it, delaying the restart is what the goalkeeper was sent off for. Yeah, I thought that this was obviously a little bit amusing. It's a youth game. For starters, it's a youth game. I don't know what these referees are doing. The power trips that they're on right now is scary. Honestly, football clubs need to be scared. Need to be wary of what's going on. Goalkeepers being sent off for delaying restarts now. It's it's something ruining the league, ruining the sport, and hopefully someone gets on top of this soon before it gets even more out of control than it already is. Anyway, Rodri, of course, who was injured in the game between Arsenal and Manchester City last weekend, has been confirmed to be missing now for the entirety of this current Premier League season. He has suffered an ACL injury with potentially a meniscus issue as well on top of that of his knee that will require around 9 months of recovery before Rodri is back. Pep Guardiola explained that they will expect him to be back for the start of next season, or just for next season, not even necessarily the start of next season. A massive blow to Man City. De Bruyne, of course, as well, still out with his issue. Manchester City travel to Newcastle United for the early kickoff today. That is going to be very interesting to see how that game goes down. But yeah, it's a very, very intriguing time for Man City and how they deal with the absence of Rodri. Of course, they did only start Rodri for the first time in that game against Arsenal on Sunday. So he hadn't actually started any of the previous games that Man City had won in their entirety. So Rodri gone, and they will have to react to that as well. But Pep actually continued speaking about Arsenal, and very interestingly went down it was an interesting pathway. He talked about war, and he talked about kind of the Gabriel comment that was made after the game, and he was kind of like, if they want war, then we'll give them more. This rivalry is certainly getting into something that we only saw previously between Arsenal and Manchester United back in the day, which is, I'm here for it. I like it. I'm enjoying this. This is football rivalry at the top of the table. That is fine. This is what you expect. However, there is this very interesting side part to the whole Arteta Guardiola dynamic. On Tuesday, ahead of the game against Bolton, Arteta was asked about the accusation of using the dark arts, which is a term that is continuing to get plenty of traction. I'm reading here from the BBC Sport website. Referring to the 3.5 years he spent as Guardiola's assistant at City, he said, "I was there for 4 years. I have all the information, so I know. Believe me." Which was kind of skipped over at the time as a comment. And Guardiola was asked about this quote because to anyone that doesn't really know the context of this, they might think that it's related to something else. Um, so Guardiola's asked about this quote from Arteta where he says, "I was there for 4 years. I have all the information, so I know, believe me." And Guardiola says, "Next time Mikel has to be more clear about exactly what he means. He said he was here for 4 years and knows exactly what happened here. That can be related to the process now with the 115 charges. Maybe he knows information about that. Or maybe he had something like, I don't know. Hopefully this question has been asked and he can answer exactly what he means." Now, I don't think he's talking about the 115 charges at all. Like, I think for anyone who's got, a modicum of intelligence, is what I'd put, is when he's asked a question about the dark arts, when he's asked about the dark arts, he's obviously talking about Manchester City's own use of dark arts in games like professional fouls, like time wasting, like that. That is what he's talking about. Very clearly and very obviously, that is what Arteta is talking about. So why then Guardiola tries to twist it into this thing about the 115 alleged financial breaches just generates an entire different edge to the conversation. Like, Arteta was asked about the relationship that he has with Pep Guardiola, and he continues to maintain that that relationship won't change. Arteta said, "I love him, I respect him, and I admire him, his team, and everything that he does. This is a sport. One thing is our profession, and the other is our personal relationship. If my relationship has to be damaged because we play against each other and one draws or one wins or the amount of times that we have lost, then I wouldn't talk to him anymore. So that's not our relationship, especially the relationship that I consider that both of us have. Sport will never get in my way of a personal relationship." Well, that's about to be tested because Guardiola's comments regarding regarding kind of linking what Arteta said, what I believe personally, in my honest opinion, to be clearly about the dark arts of time wasting and professional fouling and things like this, now being referenced as a potential hint that Guardiola feels that Arteta was talking about the ongoing kind of 115 alleged financial breach situation, I think adds an edge to this that didn't need to be there. So this is one to watch the space of. This is one where you should, really watch this space on this because it's very, very interesting. However, of course, Mikel Arteta did face the media himself, as I've already mentioned. There is a growing concern over David Raya's availability. I should mention this here. Reports emerging out yesterday evening that I think it was Connor Hum reported that David Raya was not spotted. It's worth pointing out that just because someone is not spotted, just because someone is obviously not spotted does not mean that they are not there. It could be that they have just missed things. That from the perspective of kind of someone who's kind of in and around the hotel, if they're looking for players, looking for hints about injuries and stuff, just because they've not been spotted doesn't mean they're not there. But him not being spotted, of course, has raised quite a few question marks about whether or not David Raya is going to be available. Now, of course, that means that Neto would be the man that starts. You'd imagine that Neto would, of course, be the goalkeeper. I don't think there'd be any question mark about that. And that's fine for this game. But depending upon how long David Raya is indeed out for, is a question mark. Now, Arteta faced the media and was asked about David Raya and gave, a very good answer regarding kind of that, in just a sense of like, we have to wait 24 hours to see if he's looking good or not. That would in some ways give you information that it's not serious, whatever injury he has right now, and that it's a case of kind of just waiting until the next day. But we do know that Arteta can be rather coy on injuries and be a little bit kind of deceptive sometimes for, the benefit of the club, and completely understandably so. So we will wait and see. We have the game against PSG, of course, on Tuesday. Hopefully, Raya will be back for that if he's not back for this one. He was asked about Jurien Timber and Ben White and says Jurien was able to take part in training today. So that's good news. He will be available, and Ben hopefully as well. So good news. 2 injury boosts there. Ben White and Jurien Timber hopefully both going to be fine for this game today against Leicester. And he was also asked about Mikel Merino, who seemingly had something of a very, very good recovery at this point, because while he said tomorrow is too soon, the next week we will see. He had partial training today. He's been working so hard, he's looking good. It's just about the healing of the shoulder bone and how mature that is to expose him to contact. He was asked further questions about Merino, and he says we're trying to keep him in the cage because he's been pushing everybody, the physios, doctors, everybody, and he's ready to go. He really wants it. I think we are comfortable now to start exposing him to contact, and he looked really good in training. He was asked, I believe, by Simon Collins on what he can bring to the midfield when he's available, and he says he's going to bring, firstly, an unbelievable football brain. He's so intelligent. The way he decides, occupies spaces, and makes positions, it's very rare to see that. Then a really talented player in every phase, defending, attacking, and he can deliver and do things that complement really well with the quality we have in midfield. Physicality for sure, and then he's a big threat. The moment that he's in the opponent's box, you'll see that he's a big, big threat. And I've talked about this before, that he has been amongst Europe's best at getting into the box, among Europe's best in terms of getting on the end of aerial crosses. So when Mikel Merino is in this team, and we've got corners and we've got early crosses going in and we are flooding the box, just wait and see what this guy is going to be capable of. It's exciting, and it's going to be very, very amusing, I think, when we finally see Arsenal set pieces with another dimension of Mikel Merino. Think about how damaging it is to have Gabriel in the box. When you got Merino in there as well as that, it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun, that is for sure. Arteta was also asked about Tomiyasu by my colleague Kai Karnak, and he said he had partial training today, and he looked good. He's progressing really well and is a little bit behind Merino, but we don't know with Tommy because he's another one that pushes every single day. He's in a good place now, I think. And this is a little bit surprising as well, because Arteta spoke recently about Tomiyasu's injury when he talked about the knee injury being in what he described as the first phase, which when you're talking about knee injuries tends to be quite far back. That's the last real information that we got. But it clearly is that Merino and Tomiyasu are outside doing some work, probably not with the team yet, not contact-wise, but they're outside doing some work. The benefit that Merino has, and we've talked about this before, and we talked about the fact that I think he would be able to maintain fitness and maintain, competence on the ball and etc. and so on, was because it's a shoulder injury. So it doesn't stop him necessarily from doing his running. It doesn't necessarily stop him from keeping fit. It doesn't necessarily stop him from doing ball work and continuing to train and, of course, do all of those things. Whereas kind of a muscular leg injury or a knee injury or an ankle injury, like we've seen with Tomiyasu and of course, Ødegaard as well, these things are harder to maintain fitness with because, of course, they affect your legs. So it's self-explanatory, really. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear about those things from Arteta. I did love the question from a good friend of ours, Nick Callow at Haters, who was asking about the Leicester game of last season and talking about kind of how if Arteta got to do it again, would he have done anything differently? Arteta burst out laughing to this question, which is not something you tend to see from Arteta. He says, I have enough of my tactical issues to go through here. It was a beautiful story and they fully deserved it. What they did was absolutely amazing. It's part of Premier League history, so it was great. And I love Nick for asking that question, but I loved even more Arteta's response to it, which was just, absolutely great. So I look forward to seeing Arteta maybe being a little bit more like, because it can get, you do get the sense. I've been on the end of it myself, asking questions to Arteta. He can be cold. He can be very dismissive. And there was a couple of times where he was kind of asked questions, and he was asked about a response to Roy Keane and Graham Souness, and he just said no. And then he said, if David Raya is a doubt for tomorrow, yes. It was very short, but you could tell he was just kind of done by that point with those types of questions, and he wasn't going to give them any airtime at all, which I absolutely respect and completely understand why he wouldn't want necessarily to do that, which I thought was very, very good. Of course, you can go and watch our preview show, which we recorded yesterday evening and put out live on the Arsenal versus Leicester game. I recommend that you go and do that if you've not yet finished watching it. If you haven't done so already, it is the last live upload on the channel before this one. So finish today's show and then go and listen to our preview of the game against Leicester. Of course, it was a double Tom, double Dan episode. So go and give that a listen. And please also go and get involved with football prizes. Of course, we can get we'll talk about that first. Why not? Let's talk about football prizes first. You can win a signed and framed Patrick Vieira signed shirt. Of course, courtesy of our good friends at FP. Link is down in the description to the competitions page, and it's a fantastic opportunity because this is one of the best shirts Arsenal have ever had. The 2005-2006 last season at Highbury shirt with a signed and framed Patrick Vieira opportunity there. There's also some instant win prize to win some signed Gilberto shirt, a signed Pires shirt, and another signed Vieira shirt as well. But football prizes are not the only support of the channel. NordVPN as well, continuing to bring us all of that safety and security that we need online. If you happen to be kind of, in a cafe sometimes using some public Wi-Fi, don't let those data stealers get into your system. Use a VPN, give yourself the extra layer of protection, and NordVPN are absolutely the number one service that is out there. If you're not happy with it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, but you do get extra discounts off of a 1 or a 2-year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner. So please do it now. Get involved. It's an absolute must in 2024. Changing your geolocation online, very important too. Thank you both to Nord and Football Prizes for their continued support of the channel. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show. We jump into the chat box and tackle some of your questions and more. So, please do start throwing in those capital Qs, and I'll do my absolute best to go through as many of them as feasibly possible and get some of your questions. And now, some of you are saying regarding kind of the question that was put to Guardiola about kind of about the 115 charges and Arteta, the question that actually was put to the manager was kind of done in a cheeky way. I'm just seeing if I can get the clip up. You can listen to it now, okay? So, Arteta said, I think the other day he was here for 4 years, which he did. He has information about how basically Manchester City maybe do the same kind of fouls and time wasting and everything that Arsenal did against City. Mm. Oh. Sorry, I'm staying quiet because 'cause I'm listening. Guardiola basically says, like, he said that, question mark, and what was the quote exactly? The journalist replies saying, "I was here for 4 years," and Pep said, "Yeah, he's right." And he was explaining that it was a question about his tactics and on the time wasting and the sort of fouls, and then the journalist said, "The implication was that I've been there for 4 years and I know what goes on there." So the journalist doesn't say anything about the charges, right? Um, it's a tough one. A lot of you in the chat are saying that it's the journalist that's kind of like, I don't know who the journalist was, by the way. I have absolutely no idea. So it's not like I'm, doing it because I know them. I don't have a clue who it was. But a lot of you in the chat are saying it's like the way it was asked. I think I think it's a stretch. I don't think unless I've missed something very obvious, it doesn't sound like the journalist is like putting the 115 alleged financial breaches into the question from personal. Maybe I need to listen to it again. I didn't get that sense from just listening to it there. Yeah, I'm. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. I think that Arteta, Guardiola is within his rights to ask for clarity. Because imagine you've had someone in your, you've had someone in your team as an assistant manager they then go to one of your rivals and then in a press conference has said, I know, I have the information, I know what goes on. Like that in itself. I'll read you Arteta's quote in again if you've not yet heard it. So Arteta's quote was, I was there for 4 years, I have all the information, so I know, believe me. So like I get where he's coming from. The question that comes from the journalist still does say he was talking about tactics. So the the question who's the person who's asked the question still says he's asking about tactics, and he actually says the words are let's just get the quote up again from the question. Arteta said, I think the other day he was here for 4 years about how and has information about how basically Manchester City maybe do the same kind of fouls and time wasting and everything that Arsenal did against your team. So what do you think of your friend? He was your assistant. It seems a little bit of a betrayal of, I don't know, trust or information. Pep's like, what did he say specifically? And he reads out the quote. He says, I was there for 4 years. And Pep says, yeah, he's right. And the journalist says it was a question about his tactics, time wasting, sort of fouls, and the implication. But the implication was that you've been there for 4 years, and he knows what goes on there. So the journalist doesn't say anything regarding the charges. So I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily be kind of doing that. But I don't know why Pep then brings up the charges in his response, which is a bit of a strange one. It is definitely cheeky, and that's what that's what journalists do. Like that's what we do. You ask questions for a response. You want to get a story. That's just how it goes. And I don't think the journalist maybe was even expecting to get an answer from Guardiola that included anything regarding the 115 alleged financial breaches. So that I think may have come as a bit of a surprise. The saying it was a betrayal of trust is definitely, it's a cheeky way of putting the question. But I think Pep actually goes further than what was expected of him to do with that answer to that question. So, I'm not putting too much on the journal, and I know I'm probably biased and coming from that kind of media perspective, but it creates a huge story. Like what a piece of journalism in some ways. It creates a massive story. But I think the journalist does enough to say, like, he says it a number of times. He talks about the tactics. He talks about the time wasting. He talks about the professional fouls. He talks about all of that, in the question. So he makes it very clear that that is the implication. But it's just kind of the betrayal aspect of asking the question. But in some ways, I'm surprised to hear that from Arteta. Personally, I was surprised to hear that Arteta answered the question in that way. Obviously, he said it on Tuesday, still kind of, close to that Manchester City game. Again, I'll read you the quote. Arteta said, I was there for 4 years. I have all the information, so I know, believe me. And he was asked a question about the dark arts. That was in response to a question about the dark arts. Implication, of course, there, it's about tactics. So it's a great story. It's very interesting, and I look forward to seeing more fallout from it. And so, it's turned into a very big thing. A lot of, I was getting messages about it yesterday. So as I say, I kind of like it as kind of someone who grew up watching football during the Arsenal, Manchester United golden era of rivalry, the war of words between Wenger and Ferguson. I've never really liked the fact that Arteta and Guardiola are good friends. I don't want them to be necessarily good friends. I want them to really be at each other's throats in some ways from a fan perspective, because I just think that's how rivalries work. I don't want it to be all pally. I want there to be a real edge to this rivalry. And that struggled to materialize, I think, at times because of the relationship that Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta have. So if that is indeed in some way kind of fractured and starts to fissure, I think that there is a real chance that this rivalry does explode and turns into something absolutely magical that we've been looking at for a very, very, very long time, which is we've been waiting for, for a very, very long time, which is ultimately going to be very, very exciting. And I look forward to seeing it, and I look forward to hopefully covering it even more. I see in the chat box, Adyeri is jumping in with quite a few comments about Darren Eales. Of course, this is the story that the Newcastle chief executive, Darren Eales, will step down from his position after being diagnosed with chronic form of blood cancer. The club has confirmed. A quote from Eales said, "Being CEO of Newcastle United is an extraordinary privilege, and I'm incredibly proud to be part of the club's exciting journey. However, it has become apparent to me that now is the right time to make this decision so that I can prioritise my health and my family," which is completely understandable. And I think Pep Guardiola actually mentioned this in a pretty classy way in his press conference as well beforehand. So again, we here all send our absolute best to Darren Eales and his family at what I'm sure is a very, very difficult time. And we wish him the speediest and healthiest of recoveries too. Let's tackle some more. I feel like we've gone quite heavy on that whole Pep Arteta thing. So let's hear from some of your comments on some of the other things I'm sure that's going on as well. Dickens says, Arteta is building a team of giants. Gabby, Calafiori, Saliba, Ben, White, Merino. I'm seeing us getting Sesko maybe in the summer to complete that giant jigsaw. Yeah, there is definitely a feel that Arsenal's team is a lot more... It's definitely a lot more stronger, physically imposing, intimidating. Like, that is all things that we didn't have for a long time. We had no cojones, as Troy Deeney once said. So, yeah, that is definitely something that is a benefit that we've seen instilled as well. Wilson says, I really feel that the Arsenal-Man City rivalry reminds me of the Wenger and Fergie days. It's not yet. It's still not got the edge of those days quite yet. And obviously, we were a lot younger when watching those times. And so for some of us who are still in our 20s and 30s, you know, we'll not remember those days as well as our listeners that are in their 40s, 50s and beyond as well. And we'll know that the rivalry and the words and the war that went on between Arsenal and Manchester United was far more ingrained and deeper than the current Arsenal-Man City rivalry is. That's not to say that this rivalry between Arsenal and Man City cannot evolve into something as fractious and as kind of edgy as what the Arsenal-Man United rivalry was back in the late 90s and early noughties. It definitely could. And I hope that it does. I really, really do hope that it does. Let's go to scrolling up a little bit more. Pedro says, the important thing is, have you actually unpacked any boxes? Says Pedro. Yes, a lot of boxes. In fact, there's only one more in this room. And I don't think it's for this room. But yes, we are gradually getting there. Boxes are... kitchen's done. Study is basically done. Bedroom is done. Second bedroom's not done. Garage has a lot of boxes in still. Living room is nearly done. So yeah, you know, I think actually no, I'm pretty happy to say living room is done as well. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's it's taken time, but it's moving. Still your face says, who would you start in midfield? I would go Rice, Partey, Waneri, Trossard, Kai, and Saka. If you want to know who I'd start, go back and watch my preview show yesterday. It gives you all the answers to those questions regarding Leicester. So yeah, I think that's the way forwards. Kieran says, read the giant squad building. Is Rafael Leao a part of that? I understand there's some OOP stuff, but I think that tends to happen with superstars at clubs. Do you see us maybe going for him? I don't know what the OOP thing is, but what I do think is that Leao is a very talented player. I don't think he's someone that necessarily Arsenal have been looking at of late, though. It seems Florian Wirtz. We heard, of course, a couple of days ago, reports in Germany suggesting Wirtz was indeed a key kind of target maybe for Arsenal next summer. So that might be one to watch. Harvey says, Tom, do you think the Premier League will change the rules somehow during corners because of Arsenal? I don't feel that we do anything wrong. It's just about playing smart. Yeah, I think they already have, Harvey. They've already changed and tweaked some of the rules. Of course, there's a lot more emphasis on what players do around goalkeepers now. Ben White's tactics have not been as dark artsy as they were last season because there are new regulations around corner taking. So that definitely has played a part in that. Jabu says, what's your opinion of the Villa striker, John Duran? I really like his play. Very impressive this season, John Duran. And actually, I and a lot of other fans, I think, have underestimated John Duran. And actually, when he was being linked to Chelsea, there was kind of a lot of kind of jokes and laughs at Chelsea being linked to John Duran. I'm now very, very happy that Chelsea didn't get their hands on John Duran because I think he would have been a very good signing, it seems, for him. And the interesting dynamic that the Villa have got is that they've got Ollie Watkins and they've got this very good young striker in John Duran who's doing very well when he comes off the bench, but they only play with a one striker system. Ironically, Emery's got a very similar problem to what he had when he had Aubameyang and when he had Lacazette. The question is now is how is he going to deal with having both Duran and Watkins? And is he going to be in a better place? Is he going to manage the presence of both Aubameyang and, of course, Lacazette? Is he going to manage the Watkins-Duran dynamic better than what he managed the Aubameyang-Lacazette dynamic? And that's going to be very intriguing. If I was him, I think he's managing it perfectly right now. Watkins is the number one striker, but you're giving Duran plenty of opportunities to play and you're rotating him in for cup games because you've got a striker good enough to do that. I don't think that Duran will stick around at Villa, though, still very long. I think that there are certainly going to be clubs that will be coming in for John Duran and offering him some regular first-team football at potentially a Champions League level if he continues on this form. And Aston Villa will get a lot of money for that. You know, the offers that were coming in for him were around 35 to 40 million in the summer. Expect that to be 60, maybe even more if his form continues in this way. Vegas Gunner says, I wish that we'd move Jesus to midfield and find another big, nastier bruiser up top to back up or compete with Havertz. But it is easier said than done. I think that you will see a striker next summer. I think a striker will be a lot more of a focus for Arsenal during the next summer window. And I think that is definitely going to be something that we look to, whether it's a Gyökeres, whether it's a Seshko. I think these are the types of players that you will see Arsenal move for next summer. I think a striker will take a lot more emphasis, depending upon, of course, how Havertz continues going on. I think his versatility enables Arsenal to go for a centre-forward next summer and spend a lot of money as well. Wonton Soup says, I'm beginning to wonder if the constant rule changes every season are more about creating a dramatic product than for the betterment of the game. Preach. PW says, Matt, in response, he did before experimenting with Zinchenko. I think it was a big mistake. I guess there's no going back. I don't know what this is in response to. And Peter, it's about Kieran Tierney. I hope Kieran Tierney is given another chance. I'm doubtful. A mistake going for the experimentation. I mean, the change of the left-back position has been one of the best things that's happened to Arsenal. It's coincided with Arsenal's growth and progression as a club and certainly becoming a lot more defensively steely. So I don't agree there, PW. I'm going to put it out there. I think that maybe there are fans out there that perhaps you are part of that just have kind of this cult hero following of Kieran Tierney that in some ways blinds the view of what we did at left back. The progression and the change of the left back position, no matter how much I love and adore Kieran Tierney for his quality and his personality, was the right decision. And we have seen so many benefits come from that change from, Timber, of course, this season and Calafiori this season, but also, of course, being more steely with Kivior and Tomiyasu against Manchester City and some other big sides, so that when we go to these big six teams, as we were doing with Tierney and losing, we now are unbeaten against these big six teams on a regular occasion. In fact, I saw a stat the other day. I don't know if I can find it. Let me see if I can get this stat. Yes, I can. The big six versus Arsenal in the Premier League. Man City, 0 wins in their last 3 games. Spurs, 0 wins in their last 5 games. Liverpool, 0 wins in their last 4 games. Chelsea, 0 wins in their last 5 games. Manchester United, 0 wins in their last 3 games. That's the Big Six's record against Arsenal in the Premier League. That is brilliant. And that comes from changes to the team, like at left back. That comes from the evolution to a side that, from the perspective of any, I think, unbiased onlooker at Arsenal, sees that progression and sees that improvement. And our record against Big 16s prior to Arteta's arrival was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Like, we could not win, we could not draw, we could barely scrape anything away from home against Big Six teams. And the tactical changes, the tweaks, the recruitment, the squad building of Arteta and Edu's tenure has turned us into one of the most difficult teams to beat in the world and one of the most threatening teams to play as well in the final third as well. So it is and has been a very, very good decision to change the Kieran Tierney style of fullback on that left-hand side, and we have benefited massively. And not only that, but it has been something that we are seeing adopted by a lot of other teams, other than Liverpool, of course, but they themselves suffer defensively because of that choice. But you look at Manchester City with Nathan Ake, with Gvardiol, These aren't Kieran Tierney type left backs. You look at you look at kind of these types of shifts in football. Arsenal and Man City have been at the forefront of those changes, and it has been a huge, huge benefit to see that shift in fullback position. It's certainly, I would not agree with you that it is a, quote, big mistake to have done that. I think we have benefited massively from that. Anyway, that's going to bring an end to today's show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. I hope you have a fantastic day. I know it'll be heavily predicated on the result later this afternoon. I'm looking forward to being there at the Emirates to watch it and to cover it. You can, of course, if you're unable to watch the game but you want to keep updated with what's going on, I'll be running the live blog over on football.london, minute-by-minute commentary of that. So I look forward to bringing you that. Have a fantastic rest of your Saturday. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.